Again, this goes right back to the heart of two issues that the Minister herself has raised. One is the question of mirroring in this new provisions the language that we have in existing social welfare legislation, so far as possible or so far as appropriate. The other question and issue is the question of helping people and ensuring that we are in fact offering and supporting services and ensuring that people are given that full range. And Minister, you yourself spoke eloquently on this issue in the past. I recall when you spoke about people should have the opportunity to come back, and I think, I apologize if it is incorrect, but I think it was to become physicists or to become what they may wish to become, to have educational training and employment options presented to them. The concern is that there is a change in the language, two main changes that have been brought in, but one specific change in the previous legislation in relation to unemployment benefit and the question of disqualifications. The person may be disqualified from receiving unemployment benefit under this, where they have without good cause, what they say, has received an offer of suitable employment, or has without good cause refused or failed to avail himself or herself of any reasonable opportunity of providing and receiving training, or has failed or neglected to avail himself or herself of any reasonable opportunity of obtaining suitable employment. Any reasonable opportunity. The language in this bill speaks to an opportunity, singular. And it is a different thing to require that somebody would engage, that they would take up some of the panoply of offers and potential directions that they made, that they would either be engaging in some reasonable opportunity of training or some reasonable opportunity of suitable employment. But it is a different thing to require and come with, of course, associated penalties, because that is what this area engages with, an opportunity. I'm going to read the specific language now, page 10, line 33. So it simply says here now that to participate in, agree to participate in, or avail himself or herself of an opportunity of participating in any scheme or programme of work experience or a course of education, training or development which is prescribed for the purposes of this section. So we're moving from a situation where somebody has to show that they're willing to engage in any reasonable opportunity of training, any reasonable form of employment, to a situation where a person who declines not any reasonable, and bear in mind the requirement for reasonable is now removed from the state, but any scheme or a course which is prescribed for the purposes of this section, which is considered appropriate. Again, who is considering here? It would seem to be the case officer solely, but considered appropriate having regards to. And the is prescribed for is the other phrase, which is new. Is prescribed for is literally, in its dictionary definition, a rule, a prescription. So, for example, I may meet one of my fellow senators here, and I may, or whoever it may be, and they come forward and I say, I have prescribed for you a specific job, perhaps in a multinational chain, or a specific course, perhaps it's one that, we need 3 more people on it, it's coming up. And if you say no to that specific course, to that specific job, you are leaving yourself vulnerable in relation to your payments. So again, Minister, I'm simply asking in these amendments, and perhaps you have a different way of phrasing it, but that we would be consistent, whereby we ensure that reasonableness is a requirement in the wider sense, that we move away from a climate of prescription of a specific option for persons, and that we restore the language which is in other parts of the Social Welfare Consolidated Act, whereby we say any reasonable opportunity of training, any reasonable opportunity of obtaining suitable employment. And if a person in the unlikely situation where somehow they are able to take a case to the courts, at least they'll be in a position to say, you know, have the courts determine was it reasonable or not. At least that gives people a recourse of some kind. I don't believe that people will take cases to the courts, but if they were to, it's, I think, a reasonable phrase to include. Thank you.